Let me tell you a little secret. I don't think I've ever been more nervous to try out a product than the 3rd generation AirPods Pro, because these are surprisingly different to the previous set of AirPods, and depending on how you like your AirPods, those differences might affect whether or not you should buy them. Now, I've said a bunch of times over the past few years that the Apple AirPods are probably my favourite Apple product ever, and that is a big statement coming from a long-time Apple fan. There's that saying that Apple nerds trot out all the time when they're talking about Apple products, which is, this just works, which I know is really annoying, but in the case of AirPods, I think it's the most true. They let you connect super easily, allow you to flow seamlessly between devices without having to faff around with Bluetooth settings, and if you want to pause your content, you just click it or remove an earbud, and the noise cancelling is about the best in its class. They sound great for calls, music, or pretty much any type of content. And if you lose them, you can just find them by getting them to play a sound and use the location tracker in the Find My app. It's all really good stuff. So I owned the original AirPods. I upgraded to the 1st generation AirPods Pro, and then I found the upgrade to the 2nd generation pretty incredible in terms of the sound quality improvement. So when Apple announced these at their September event, I was really curious to see how you could improve on what to me was a pretty perfect product. In this video, we'll take a look at what's new in this 3rd generation release, including what's good, what's weird, as well as a few things I don't like about these. Let's go. Okay, let's start with the good stuff first. Well, Apple led with 2 big selling points at their September event, and they're both genuinely impressive. First of all is the improved noise cancelling, which they claim to be 4 times better than the 1st generation and twice as good as the 2nd generation AirPods Pro. And yep, it is better. You just can't deny it. Apple do noise cancellation and transparency mode so well. There's not many audio brands who can compete with them here. I tried these out in a coffee shop, on a busy street, even when my kids were listening to K-pop Demon Hunters on repeat, and in all situations, they block out sound incredibly well. The second big new feature in the AirPods Pro Generation 3 is heart rate monitoring, which is part of the reason behind the slightly different shape on these new earbuds. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know that I ditched my Apple Watch about a year ago, and I just haven't looked back, but I sometimes do miss the live heart rate tracking during workouts. So I was really interested to see how these work, and it's just as seamless as everything else that you get with AirPods. When you fire up a workout in the Apple Fitness app, your heart rate gets automatically measured throughout with these invisible light pulses, and it gives you live updates throughout to give you an accurate reading of what training zone you're going to be in. So yeah, if you're thinking of getting rid of your Apple Watch but you think you might miss heart rate tracking, AirPods Generation 3 have got you back now. And at least in my initial testing, it didn't harm battery life too badly at all either. Now, we do need to talk about battery life, but that's one of the weirder things about this release, which we will talk about later in the video. Now, meanwhile, I know what you're thinking, weren't there actually 3 big features announced with these? Well, yeah, Apple also heavily trailed another new feature in their keynote, which is live translation. Effectively, you can put these in, squeeze both tips, and then both understand and communicate with someone, even if neither of you speak the other person's language. But this is not unique to the AirPods Pro Gen 3s. It actually works on the 2nd gen model too, as long as you have an iPhone model that has the ability to run Apple Intelligence. And that's because all of the translation processing is actually done on your phone. The AirPods are just a vehicle to capture and transmit that audio. I tried this out with a film in a foreign language, and yeah, if you're traveling a lot or you're learning a new language, this might be a bit of a killer upgrade for you. But if live translation is your main reason for buying these, just get the 2nd gen AirPods Pro and you'll probably be happy that you saved a little bit of cash. Same goes for the medical grade hearing aid and hearing testability. Neither of those are unique to the new AirPods Pro, but they do work well, and I'm happy to report that my hearing is doing pretty okay, despite what my wife is always telling me. Another good thing about these is the new fit. So rather than just hooking them in, they're designed to rotate inwards, which helps them grip into your ears much better. And another reason for the improved fit is the redesigned tips, which are now a mix of silicone and foam, which has the side benefit of also helping with noise isolation. You also get a few more of these ear tip sizes to try in the package compared to previous versions, and all this working together just means that these will stay in your ears much better than previous models. Next up, AirPods are probably the most dropped Apple item you own, so you're going to be wanting a case, and these are 2 of my favorites. First, there's the ESR Cyber Flick Lock case. This is for ultimate drop protection. They lock your AirPods shut with a combination of magnets and a physical switch, which clicks in place. And yes, you'll be pleased to hear this fixes the most common problem with AirPods, which is that if you drop them without a case on, it will always crack open and both earbuds go hurtling off into different dimensions. And as you can see from my test, That will not happen with the Cyber Flick Lock case, and they'll be extra safe in here with these reinforced corners for extra protection. Secondly, we have the Orbit hybrid case, which is a bit different. There's no sliding latch, just a super strong magnet with over 1100 grams of holding force, even though you can still open it with one finger. It's a bit of an enigma. Look at this, I look like I'm back in the 90s at a rave trying to get it to open. The Orbit hybrid case is still super secure, and it's got a shock absorbing core to give you solid protection if you drop your precious AirPods. The best feature though, that I've not seen anyone else talk about, this little tool comes in the box and it lets you push out the AirPods safely without damaging the charging port. Genius. Both of these cases support MagSafe charging with way stronger magnets than the built-in AirPods case, and they come in a variety of colours to suit your style, plus holes so that you can still charge them the old-fashioned way and hear the speakers if you ever get them lost. Grab your favourite one at the link in the description, and thanks to ESR for sponsoring this one. Let's move on to how these sound, and whether this is a good thing or not will very much depend on what you're planning to listen to. What I can safely say is that the sound profile is different. Whereas the first and second generation sounded quite flat and neutral, these ones sound much more like they've already got an EQ applied to them. In real terms, this means you will hear deeper bass and generally a much wider, fuller sound profile than previous versions. I tend to listen to a lot of podcasts and audiobooks, so I was really able to hear the difference in the way the Gen 3s reproduce vocals. Even on the podcasts that are recorded with cheaper mics and that are less produced, they sound punchier and much clearer. If you're listening to music or watching films, it's really immersive and detailed, which again is really all you want from a nice pair of in-ear headphones. Now, my usual test track for headphones is the live version of Hotel California by the Eagles, and this sounded phenomenal, even if, and this is a tiny little niggle, slightly clinical in the high and mid ends. I will say though, if you're not a fan of big, heavy bass, then you might not enjoy these quite as much as the previous generation. If you prefer a warmer, more natural sound, I'd say stick with the second gen AirPod Pros. Although you can always tinker with the audio in the settings of most music and podcast apps now, so you should be able to find an audio balance that suits you. Next up, let's take a look at some weird things in these new AirPods Pro, including some things that would lead me to not recommend that you buy these, and we should probably start by comparing sizes. If you just look at the cases, you can see that the new model is quite a bit bigger. Now that's mainly to adapt to the new shape of the third gen AirPods Pro, but I have to admit, I can definitely feel these in my pocket more obviously than the sleeker previous generation. Now, if you don't mind having a bigger bulge in your pockets, then you should be fine with these new ones. And no, I'm not going to make a joke about what I just said, you dirty buggers. The good news here is that whilst it is bigger, the whole package is about the same weight, just 6 grams in it between these ones and the second gen AirPods Pro. Now, the odd thing about the difference in size is that battery life is actually reduced on the new model. You get 24 hours on the third generation versus 30 hours on the second generation. I know that's not a huge difference, but it might be the difference between you being able to while away the hours on that short flight and running out of juice. On the flip side, the buds themselves hold a bit more battery life, giving you 8 hours of listening time on the third gen compared to 6 hours on the previous model. Another weird thing I've noticed is that there have been a few bugs with these new AirPods. I'm running the latest firmware on these, but occasionally I do pick up some weird feedback and whistling and audio glitching. Now, this has only happened rarely and only when I've got noise cancellation or transparency mode switched on, but I suspect this might be a faulty batch and I might end up returning these to Apple under warranty just to check that out. Either way, you might want to hold off on your upgrade until Apple sort this out, because I know I'm not the only person who has found this. Okay, so should you upgrade to the third generation AirPods Pro? Well, the usual rule with Apple releases is that third time's a charm, and I'd say these are no different. If you're upgrading from the standard AirPods to these, it's a big yes. You'll get amazing noise cancelling and a better microphone for calls and better battery life, not to mention all those other new features that are unique to the AirPods Pro Gen 3. If you're upgrading from the first edition AirPods Pro, I'd also say this is still a yes. You'll notice a massive noise cancellation and comfort jump, not to mention a big difference in the sound quality. Now, if you're upgrading from the second gen AirPods Pro, I'd say this is a maybe. Yeah, the noise cancellation is definitely better and they are a better fit, but you might not need the new heart rate monitor and your sound taste might vary to mine. I reckon if you can get these second gen AirPod Pros on sale, grab these as you're sure to find them a solid upgrade to pretty much any other wireless earbuds. How about you then, folks? If you've upgraded to these ones, how are you finding them so far? And if you enjoyed watching me try and tell you what these sound like without being able to show you what these sound like, yeah, you'll probably like this one over here. See you next time.